And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. Triple G is back in MLS with the Chicago Fire. I spoke his move into existence. I'm putting it out there. I'm so proud that I got to finally get one right. But you know what? Listen, as much as we love to brag about how much I know ball, it is time to preview the 2025 season with our good friend, fellow card collector, MLS lover, Tom Barlow Stan. It is Nick from Glasshouse Soccer. How you doing, man?
That might be the best introduction that I have ever had in the long history of introductions doing these kind of show. I'm doing really well, Andrew. It's great to be back talking MLS with you guys.
Yeah, unfortunately, Connor couldn't be here. As crazy as our schedules are, his work schedule has him. I just asked him. He's working 80 hours a week. So he said not so deep dives are off the list this year. So unfortunately, he can't be here, but he sends his best. And he had to say, I want to know what scarf Nick is going to rock this time. So for scarf of the week, what are you rocking today?
Yeah, scarf of the week. So this was something from one of the Heritage Nights last year at Chicago Fire games. This was the Greek Night scarf, and I obviously I'm going to show it off, being Greek myself, but also it really kind of represents some of the player movement that the Chicago Fire have had this offseason. A lot of the fans were very high on their young Greek striker, Yorgos Koutsias, who is now on loan to the sister club Lugano. Off to a great start, already bagged, I think, 3 or 4 goals for them. But that really signaled a different direction that the club is going to go under the new head coach and director of sport, Greg Berhalter.
Absolutely heartbreaking watching him go on loan because my breakout player for the last 3 years no longer in the team. So I had to go something different this time, which we will get to. But before we talk about 2025, I should actually show off my scarf first because otherwise that'd be weird. It's the same Chicago one we had last year. I haven't gotten anything updated just yet, but we do have the short-lived and very much not loved old school badge.
Yeah, we got to upgrade you,
Then
man.
yeah, then with the little crosses on the outside, it's there. It's a collector's item at this point, so we hold on to it. But
It's the
um,
Coke 2 of MLS logos. That's what that was.
absolutely, and it is just it's neat because it's different, and you probably won't see anything like it ever again because obviously the logo's retired. But yeah, just the logo sucked, and I think we talked about that last year about how bad that rebrand went. So.
Absolutely. We
Um,
don't need to rehash that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, listen, we're gonna jump into 2025 here. We're gonna chat all about it, but we have to talk about 2024. We have to talk about like the decade leading up to 2024 because let's be real, it has been with no exaggeration a decade of despair for the Chicago Fire because no matter who they sign or how much money they spend or who is on the sideline as the coach, they never seem to be able to put it together into one cohesive puzzle. And 2024 was no different, right? After another very active window, they were dead last in the East. They carried that on to Leagues Cup where they didn't record a single point, and they were bounced in the group stages. 2025, it's Triple G's team. Tom Barlow still exists as a player on this team, and they will be not only playing, but dominating in MLS and US Open Cup play. Your thoughts on 2024 as it was?
Yeah, well, that's the hope. I mean, you summed it up pretty well. You know, you want to look back at the recent history of the Chicago Fire. Their last playoff appearance was 2017, and their last playoff victory was 2009. So you're right. With despite all the different players and coaches that have come through, they have not been able to put it together. Now, there's a few things that you can really point to that have been kind of the main reasons for that, which I think they have addressed this offseason. The first is they just did not sign good DPs. You saw the failure of Xherdan Shaqiri, overpriced and just a bust here. Gaston Jimenez, who kept getting designated player contracts. I think it was more for roster construction because I don't know if they were able to then bring in another international player or move some money around, whatever the case was. Gaston Jimenez kept getting designated player contracts, and you really don't see too many defensive midfield DPs over 30 with those kind of deals. So the fact is they've parted ways with him. Shaqiri's back in Switzerland. They've opened up their designated player spots. So finally now we've got Hugo Kuipers, who, despite the poor service that the Fire had last season, ended up with 10 goals. So look to him now to be more of a focal point on the attack. They bring in Jonathan Bamba from Celta Vigo, who is their new designated player this year. He is going to be there to create offense and pitch in on the goal scoring. And we'll see if the Fire end up filling that third designated player spot over the summer. So they've addressed the first issue, designated player signings. The other issue, which has hampered them, was poor coaching, no style of play, no identity, no cohesiveness in the locker room. So we've seen that with Frank Klopas as the lame duck head coach the last couple of seasons. You saw it with Ezra Hendrickson. You saw it with Rafa Wicki. Wicki had a style of play, but the front office didn't want to support him with the players that he wanted. And thankfully, now that Joe Mansueto is the man in Chicago in the owner's box, he has thrown his support behind Greg Berhalter and kind of given him carte blanche to do whatever he wants with the roster. And so we're addressing that. They've got 11 or 12 new players, and they've released 13 or 14 players from last year's roster. So this is a brand new team. And the last big point I think that the Fire finally addressed this offseason was coming together as an organization. It was so focused on the first team that the Fire forgot they had a CF2 team down in MLS Next Pro. They forgot about their academy system. They forgot about the business side of running an MLS club. And under Joe Mansueto over these last few years, you have seen that grow exponentially. I think they've quadrupled or quintupled the number of corporate sponsors they've had over the last 2, 3 years. They just finished building a $100 million training center. They have stated as a goal, we want 5 to 6 homegrowns on the senior roster each and every year. The market, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but the market, the talent pool of players here in the Chicago area is so great that that's a very attainable goal. And then they've integrated the youth system to the academy, to MLS Next Pro, all the way up to the senior team. You've seen guys, they just signed Robert Turdan. He's 15 years old, second biggest homegrown deal in MLS behind Kevin Sullivan. He was out with the team in California at the Coachella Valley Invitational, training with them in preseason. So you have these European stars, these MLS stars now training with 15-year-olds who they just signed to homegrown contracts. They're integrating an entire pathway throughout the whole organization. So this, I mean, this is the most Chicago thing you'll ever hear anyone say. But this is the year. I really mean it this time. This is the year. It's going to happen. Things are turning around.
You we're going to get into it, but no spoilers because I've said this every year for the last 5 years, but I agree. I think this might be the year. I think this might be it.
Yeah.
And I guess what? It doesn't matter if it is or not because I'm going to say it until it is because I can't turn around because the first year I say it won't be is the year that it will be. So I'm not going to do it.
That's like how I felt in college. I'm like, okay, if I leave now, I can get to class. If I leave now, I can catch the bus. And I'm going to sit, I'm going to wait, I'm going to do it, and it's going to happen. And the moment I start to walk away is when the bus comes, is when I miss my class. So I'm like, yeah, you got to stay all in every year, all the time, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
100%, 100%. Now, listen, you touched on a lot of the additions that have come in and some of the
Yeah,
bigger names that they've signed in. Best addition that they've got so far. Who would you put that on?
sure. Well, I could say Greg Berhalter is
Yeah,
probably
and
our
that's
biggest.
fair. That's totally fair.
He is transforming the sporting side of things, building the roster the way he sees it, building out the staff, the sporting side of things, bringing in new assistant coaches, working his USMNT connections to bring in a player like Sam Rogers on short notice, a new center back. So I think Greg Berhalter is the big get for the Chicago Fire organization this season. As far as a player goes, it's got to be the designated player signing, Jonathan Bamba. He has had a very good career in France and in Spain. Won League One in France in 2020, 2021 with Lille. I think he had double-digit goals even that season, but he's become more of a creator in his career, which is exactly what the Chicago Fire need. And if you look at who Greg Berhalter has been bringing in, it has been attacking players, it's been wingers. He's probably going to stick with the same style of play that we're used to seeing from Berhalter teams, but he's going to be able to execute it at a much higher level with these players in MLS.
Yeah, listen, I think, and we said it kind of in the beginning. It was kind of in a joking matter, but I did call Triple G to Chicago because I do think he is the perfect fit. We talked about it last year, and I've repeated it about 7 times because I'm not usually right, nor am I often right. So when I am, I like to make sure people know it. But I always thought that Chicago didn't need the big name, flashy signing coach to get them from worst to first. What they needed was somebody who's going to come in and set a foundation and understand like this is the way the team's going to need to play to find success against other MLS teams. I don't need them to win Supporter Shield tomorrow. What I need them to do is say, okay, we are going to be, have a really good set foundation of how we're going to play, the players we're looking for, the philosophy of the club in and of itself with our homegrowns, with the type of transfer we're making, all of this sort of stuff. We're going to set that foundation now so that 5 years from now we can compete for something. Because yeah,
Yeah,
you're always gonna do this in MLS, right? But you need to have
right.
somebody who's gonna say, we have to start here. We can't just shoot for the moon and land among the stars because what
Right.
happens? You shoot for the moon, you're landing up back on Earth, and that can't happen.
Yeah, and you're right that that's I think the long-term plan with bringing in a guy of Greg Berhalter's pedigree. Like he's got the coaching chops, and he's been flexing a little bit of the front office muscle, in his time with USMNT, doing a lot of recruiting, doing a lot of networking, and connecting with people around the globe. And heck, you speaking of recruiting, you even saw him trying to bring Neymar over to Chicago. So he has reached out. He has left no stone unturned when it comes to bringing in players and looking to set a foundation. But the one thing he's constantly preaching in his press conferences and in his quotes and in the press releases is they're looking for players of a certain character. I don't know if Neymar necessarily fits that certain high quality character, but you don't say no to Neymar. Thankfully, he's down in Santos right now. We'll see if things change over the summer for him. But yes, Berhalter is setting a standard in the locker room, in the organization, and then you'll see it fill in on the pitch.
Hook that to my veins. Triple G trying to tell Neymar to track back with a winger as he's trying to play his 4-2-3-1. Oh man, that'd be insane. I like the addition of Kawami on loan at the center mid role because I felt you were maybe a little bit thin there in terms of like higher quality, especially with Jimenez moving on and players like that. But he's got solid experience in France. I think they can rely on him to bring in a bit of quality and balance the center of the park, not necessarily be that home run, guy, but just we talk about it all the time. Like when you are not a good team, which I don't think anybody's going to try and pretend that Chicago has been recently. You need somebody to come in who says, I don't really care about what's going on around me. I'm going to do the dirty work. I'm going to sit in and work hard and work our way out of this. We're not just going to wish our way out of it. We're going to work our way out of it. So I always think like the center mid role is a really important spot for that. 'Cause it's the engine of the room. It's the engine of the team. It's really a big focus. So I like that they went out and got somebody with a good bit of experience there to help out.
Absolutely. And that could have been, should have been, maybe had to have been Kellen Acosta last season, but
Mhm.
there was so much missing around him, and there was just such a lack of direction with that team that no matter how well Kellen performed, it wasn't going to help out. So hopefully, like we all agree with you, the Chicago fans think this is going to be a revamped midfield. Now we know Berhalter likes to kind of play up the wings and do some overlaps and overloads on the sides, but yeah, in MLS, you've got to have that guy in the middle who can drive the ball forward. We saw it with the Galaxy and Ricky Pooch, and I think most MLS teams really track back and try and get into their transition defense rather than counter pressing. So, maybe I don't know, maybe Portland or maybe the Red Bulls will be a team that'll do that to you, but the Chicago Fire can absolutely take advantage of that middle third of the field now with Kwame being there to attack, with Brian Gutierrez hopefully taking a step up in his development. He's a player who said he wanted 15 goal contributions last season for himself. I think he ended up with like 8 or so. But he got called into the January USMNT camp, got some minutes in the red, white, and blue. Hopefully that brings his confidence up a little bit. And then playing alongside a guy like Kwame and then Acosta behind them gives him that confidence to push forward. So, yes, I think that midfield is going to be a lot stronger this season.
And they need it to be. Let's be real. You also hit on a bunch of people who had moved on and left the team. I think you said what 14 total on the way out. Who do you think is the one
By
you're gonna?
last count, I think, yeah.
Yeah, who do you think is the one you're gonna miss the most?
I mean, Yorgos Koutsias, my patrioti here, my brother from the homeland there. But looking at the defense, I know a lot of fans are going to miss Rafa Chihos. He was such a class act, quality center back. He was the captain of the team until Shaqiri showed up and graciously said, "Here's the armband. You're the big name player here." And then was always seemed to be getting on the end of crosses. Oddly enough, like he was one of the options, and that tells you how bad the attack was when your center back's the guy you're looking to find on the far post. But he's a guy I know the fans are going to miss because he was that stalwart. He fought for the team every minute he was out on the pitch. But it just he was getting up there in age, lost a step, started to deal with some injury issues. So as an organizational decision, they had to move on from him. Additionally, I think a lot of people are going to be missing Fede Navarro, who is back down in Argentina. He was their U22 signing. Great talent, great physicality, and 3 years ago was named like team MVP or defensive team MVP. And everyone had high hopes for him, but he just never developed the way he needed to. I always looked at him as like a poor man's Diego Chara, but the coaching wasn't there, the team around him wasn't there, and he just turned into like a walking yellow card. Like I remember even last season, I think he got a yellow card less than a minute into the game. Like he was a halftime sub and immediately started chirping at the ref, goes in for a hard tackle in like the 45 seconds into the second half and gets a yellow card and is just chirping at the ref. This can't happen. Not at this level. This is ridiculous. So, a lot of fans missed, I think, his potential more than his actual impact on the pitch.
Yeah, yeah, I think a lot of those good points. And again, but it's really hard to look at somebody from the team that finished in the bottom of the conference and be like, yeah, we should have really held on to you. You pushed us to that next level, right?
Right.
So I think Shields is a great shout because if you're gonna pick anybody, you're probably gonna want him to stick around. I put Koutsias in there. I have a contractually obligated clause in some contract somewhere to mention him in every Chicago Fire episode. And I can't pick him for player to watch anymore, so I have to put him here. But in all seriousness, I mean, I didn't pick him for breakout player every year because I was like, sure, why not? Right? I genuinely thought he had something about him, and like you said, he went on over on loan, and right off the bat, he's got a couple goals on his resume, right? So I'm honestly hoping that like this, he comes back from loan and then becomes part of this team like legitimately because I think he had something there, and I'd like to see him under Triple G do something special.
Yeah, that would be great. There is a segment of the fans who also hope that that's a reality, but with the way they've turned over the roster, and I think we never really saw what kind of striker Koutsias was going to be. Is he going to be the poacher, the target striker, the hold up play guy, the slash behind the back line kind of guy? So until he can really figure out his best style of play, I don't know if Berhalter is going to want to bring him back, but I wouldn't mind seeing him back in red. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like we said, he was my player to watch for like too many years, and it never worked. It seems like I cursed him. I don't know. But this year, lots of turnover, lots of people still fighting for spots for Triple G. Who's that player to watch this year that might break out under the new leadership?
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from here, like we said, with all the new players coming in, a new system, a new style. On the one hand, you can say Hugo Kuipers could be the breakout player. We know how talented he is. Won a Golden Boot in Belgium before coming to Chicago, and he's finally going to have service around him. He's finally going to have wingers who can play the ball to his feet, and instead of Shaqiri just trying to lob long balls over the top of defenders. So he could have a breakout season for him where he's looking at, 17, 20 goals. But I really think if you want to pick an offensive player, we got to look at Jonathan Bamba as the DP or Romanique Kwame as that attacking midfielder who's going to really create things. If you want to look on the defensive side of things, I would love to see Carlos Turan become the next big transfer piece for the Chicago Fire. He has all the physical gifts that a star center back needs, but he just needs to have that coaching. We saw when CJ Brown, the great Chicago Fire player CJ Brown, was their defensive coach a couple seasons ago, that he started to develop and started to voice his aspirations to move to Europe. And the Fire had a decent defense, and I think that was Ezra Henderson's first season as head coach. But then that following year, CJ Brown is moved to a front office role, kind of asked nicely to leave the coaching staff, or not nicely, depending on who you talk to. And then you lose that. You lose the locker room cohesion. You've got Shaqiri arguing with Kai Kamara, and the whole thing kind of falls apart. Frank Klopas and his lame duck staff don't know how to guide this young, talented player, and he starts to lose his temper. He starts to make rash challenges. He starts to, get in his own head, and he can't get out of his own way. So I'm hoping now with a solid coaching staff, with Jack Elliott playing next to him, with some new outside backs, that he is really going to break out as one of the top center backs in MLS, and net at least another $7-8 million transfer fee some team in Europe.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's a really solid choice. For me, there's a name that pops out to me, and I don't know if he's even going to get a sniff this year, but Amari Glasgow, I think would be really interesting to see here. I think 8 goal contributions, like 2K minutes in MLS Next Pro. And listen, there's a really crowded attacking group there, but I'm interested to see if he can break through because it's a talented attacking group. They've got a lot of players in there, but it's a fresh slate, right? Triple G's looking at all his options because he needs to. So I'm interested to see if he's going to give a younger guy like Glasgow a shot.
I think he's going to get his opportunities.
Yeah.
He got a first team contract this offseason, moved up from the CF2 ranks. He did have three or four the whatever those short term deals you could get in MLS last season, those
Mhm.
4 day contracts. He got all four of his and did get some minutes. Looked like he could hang. I think he was playing just a little too wild, a little too nervy the first time he got up with the first team, but settled in. And absolutely, when you're a player of that age and that I guess naivety. Like he was just going all out. He didn't know that he was playing on the big stage, right? So you're absolutely right. Glasgow is going to get his opportunities under Berhalter, and I don't know if you followed his international career at all, but he's already at like age 20 or 21, like the third leading goal scorer in Guyana's history or something like that. So
Gosh.
he is just feasting on the minnows of CONCACAF down there. Absolutely, just running amok in the Caribbean defense.
He's Chicago's version of Jesus Pereira, just
Yeah,
tearing up all the island teams. Um,
absolutely.
I love it. I love it. And like I said, I'd love to see him break out because at the end of the day, like you need to try everything at Chicago. Like you can't just expect like, oh yeah, we've got all these players, they're going to be great because you've done that for a decade and a half and we know what that looks like. So the real idea here is there are always questions hanging over this team. What is the biggest one in your opinion that's still left?
The biggest question is can they all come together?
Yeah.
We've seen the vision from the new coaching staff. We've seen the type of players they're going after and that they've brought in. Can it all come together in time to actually make the playoffs this year? Are they going to have a slow start? Are they going to be stymied by US Open Cup play? Or can they take advantage of the compact schedule now with other teams playing in various tournaments and maybe they can go up against some opponents with some tired legs. So for me, it's is it all going to come together in time, and are they going to be able to take advantage of the schedule when it presents itself?
Yeah, and mine's very similar. Is this year the year?
Is this the
Can
year?
Triple G be the savior that Chicago have needed so desperately and finally make the playoffs? It's very simple, and that kind of ties into this next section, which is predicted finish. So, is Triple G the savior? Where does this team finish this year?
He he's the savior, but he's got a few more miracles to work. I think if you want to keep running that metaphor, I don't think this is the year they make a huge leap. This is the intermediate year, and I always say in MLS, you are what you are until you're not. And the Fire haven't proven that they are a playoff team. Last year, I think they had the talent to make the playoffs. There was a stretch, I want to say over the summer and into the fall, where the Fire were in a playoff spot, or at the very least a play-in spot and it all fell apart at the end of the season for him. So I'm hoping now with some of this winning pedigree that these international signings will bring, that the Fire will improve, that they'll learn how to close games, that they'll learn how to close the season. But I still think they finish right around that 8 spot. I think that they'll get that play-in game. If things break their way, maybe they come up to sixth. But you also got to look at the rest of the Eastern Conference. It's a strong conference. They have also signed some good players around the Eastern Conference, and I just don't see the Chicago Fire on the level of Miami, New York, either New York team, Cincinnati, Columbus yet. So, and even Atlanta made a huge jump forward, at least on paper.
Nope, I'm full bought in. We're looking at playoffs. We're looking at deep playoff runs. We're looking at U.S. Open Cup success. Does Triple G take them back into Open Cup and win the whole thing on the first time back? Who says no? Who says why not? Right? Like I don't.
Yeah.
Listen,
Like
and
my
and
brain's not even there yet. I can't even
I,
comprehend that like we could make a run in the Open Cup. And with the new format, right? The MLS teams are coming in what, the round of 32, the
yeah,
round of 16. So they've only got 3 or 4 games and it should be against lesser competition, you would think.
yeah.
So yeah, it's within the realm of possibilities, but I've been hurt too many times before
I
to just
feel
get
you.
that far ahead of myself. Let me get through the first month of the season and then we can talk trophies.
Oh man. Well, listen, I asked if Triple G is going to be the guy. I say yes, and I say this every year, but I really, really say yes this year because I think he's a perfect fit for the system. His system is simple. Players from all levels can learn it, get into it quickly, and adapt. Right? He's not going to get them to a supporter shield. He's not going to get them maybe to MLS Cup in year one, but he's going to set the foundation for them to be successful long term. Long term So I think top four is audacious, but I don't think it's crazy to, like a finish between 6 and 9. I don't think it's crazy because I think a lot. So and here's what we've said about a lot of Eastern Conference teams is that last year there were 7 teams that could finish in the top four, and you're like, okay, everybody else just have fun fighting for 8 and 9. Who's going to get in, right? This year, with everybody else getting kind of weak and kind of not as strong, except for Red Bull, of course, because we're massive. It feels like all those teams have shifted down into like the 5, 6, 7, 8 range. So a couple of results are going to do really, really well for you. And I think that's what Greg is going to bring for you is that ability to turn 0 points into one and 1 point into three. You do that 2 or 3 times throughout the season, and now you're looking at, okay, especially because most of those games are going to be against people that you're looking to jump in the table.
Right.
That's going to get you in a really good spot.
Yeah, and you saw last season they took 1 point in 2 matches against New England. New England,
Yeah.
and they couldn't even beat New England at home. So you're right. It's those kind of home and home series that a lot of the fans are looking at. That yeah, if Berhalter can just turn one of those losses into a draw, or maybe let's pick up 2, 3 more wins at home, then yeah, you're looking at jumping up 2 or 3 teams. And yeah, while I still think the East is stronger than people are giving it credit for, Toronto and DC really haven't done much. So those are 2 teams that we should be ahead of at the very least in the standings. But yeah, to me, Charlotte's a wild card. Orlando's a bit of a wild card with some of their departures and signings. So we'll see where the Fire fit in with all of that. And
Yeah.
how do your Red Bulls handle success? How do they
I
how do
don't
they
know. I still don't know. We made it. We made it. I couldn't tell you what I was like. The whole play. I was in Orlando for the Eastern Conference Finals, and we won the game. And I sitting there. I'm like, what do I do now? Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Like, I just started like crying. I was like, oh my God, we did something.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we enjoy it. When you get there, just enjoy it. And then, for me, my expectations are back on the floor. I don't expect anything anymore because that's how you get hurt. So, um, I am
that's it.
so I'm so happy we got to chat again, Nick. It's been such a pleasure. I want to give you time to tell people where to find you and what you do.
Absolutely. So I have the Glass House Soccer YouTube channel, and you can find me on social media at Glass House Soccer. And you can find the Feed the Fire podcast wherever you get your shows. We're hosted on the Believe Network, but available on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Good Pods, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and guys, go check it out because not only he didn't do all of this, but I'll do it for him. Not only is he doing fire stuff, but he's big into collectibles like we are. He's big into just doing stuff that isn't just sitting down and talking. He's kind of more into the content side of it. So if you like what we do, you're gonna like what he does. Go on over and give it a follow and check it out because we're very similar. So if you are coming from over there, this is the first time you're seeing us, come follow us because you are number 26, I believe, of 30 interviews that we've done or are doing for every team this
Working
season.
hard, man.
Yeah, it's been something, especially alone with no Connor this time. It's been tough, but yeah, we're doing 30 previews to get into the preseason right before MLS kicks off, and then we go in and we're gonna do news. So we're gonna end up talking about this USL D1 thing soon. We're gonna talk about expansion stuff. We're gonna talk about basically every inevitable silly decision this league makes, we are going to cover. And then we also do MLS history. So if you're a Fire fan, you've been there forever. We have gone all the way back into their first season in '98 and covered a whole bunch of fan selected stories from the Fire, as well as every other team. So if you're into that sort of stuff, we do that too. Nick, thanks so much again for being here. We really enjoyed it. Listeners, thanks so much for listening to us, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. See ya.